What's going on, guys? My name is Psyche, and welcome back to the range tier list for Dead Cells 2.4. Today we're gonna resume right where we left off last time around, where we talked about the melee tier list, and this time around, the ranged weapons will get its spotlight. Now before I get started though, I do rate my weapons somewhat a bit differently than you might expect, though I've already explained all my criteria in my melee tier list. If you're not sure how I rate my weapons, make sure to watch that one first. But here's a quick rundown anyways. My tier list runs from D tier at the lowest and S tier at the highest. I will be presenting the list in alphabetical order of the weapons, and you can use chapters to navigate to your favorite weapon via the timestamps. And if you're just interested to see the entire tier list in one picture, there is also a timestamp for that as well. This tier list comes from a 5 BC perspective, and I am assuming you cannot dual bind. It was highly requested last time that I provide footage for the weapon that I will be talking about, but again, just like last time, there are just a lot of weapons in the game and I won't have footage for absolutely every single one. It's just way too much. And a little side note, I am not rating the beginner's bow. So without further ado, let's get started with the range tier list of Dead Cells 2.4. So first off, we have the Alchemic Carbine. Now, despite it being nerfed in the recent patch, it's still very good. You just pop it once and then things start dying right in front of you. You don't even have to get close. It has unlimited ammo and it works in the backpack. It is a very solid DLT option for any build, and its identity and poison synergy is pretty huge. This is one of those scenarios where no matter how much you nerf a weapon, because the concept is just so powerful, it will always be overpowered. Barrel Launcher is a unique weapon to use, though it is not a free win by any means. You do have to work towards it. And in addition, there is some degree of risk. If an enemy hits the barrel, it will bounce it back at you and you have to dodge it again. You can use the Masochist mutation to practice this weapon because the barrels, when it bounces back, it actually counts as trap damage. Overall though, if you can master this weapon, it is very rewarding to use. I did showcase it in a previous run, you can check that out if you want, but it doesn't need any support to make it work, and because of this high risk, high reward system, the barrel launcher will receive a above average rating. The blowgun was recently buffed in the patch. Now it also inflicts poison, so at least now there is a backup strategy. Because the thing about this weapon is that before, it was essentially the worst version of the Assassin's Dagger because the blowgun has an ammo count. If you run out, there is nothing you can do. And on top of that, Predator is now in brutality only as a mutation. But now I can see it have some fringe usage if you have a lot of support, or you can just straight out work as a support weapon by itself. Overall though, it's still kinda weak, and because of its limitations of having ammo, it will probably never be as good as the Assassin's Dagger. The Boomerang might just be the next meta breaker. The DPS of this weapon almost got doubled in 2.4. Because dual binding will be going away in the future, this weapon will probably be the one to replace it. So look at this footage with Hand of the King. The damage it does is no joke. As a support weapon, it is insanely powerful. They buffed it so that it has more range and damage ticks faster. You can pair this with any main weapon, pair it up with some nice affixes, and it can essentially melt through everything. The bow and endless quiver is too slow. Even when buffed, I just don't see any reason to use it. The thing about tactics is that the weapon has to feel fast and responsive. And the bow doesn't really have that. It does very low damage and it takes a long time to get the value. I guess you can use it with barbed tips, since you can technically get unlimited arrows stuck in enemies. Though again, it's just too slow to get the value. And a huge identity of tactics is that the weapon has to be fast. And this weapon is not it. The Electric Whip, while it's nerfed, it's still probably one of the best starting weapons in the game. It's unlocked right when you start from 0 BC, and the thing about this weapon is that it auto-targets nearby enemies, so you'll never have to worry about those flying bats. The attack is fast, so you always have time to dodge away if you feel like you're in trouble, and overall shock is just a pretty powerful mechanic. For both beginner players and veteran players, the E-Whip is pretty easy to pilot, I would say, and it's just very solid overall. The Explosive Crossbow is a weapon that works very well on its own, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best two-handed crossbows in the game. It's very easy to use, and it's not that overpowered. The reason why I'm putting it in the S tier is because exactly that. It's not that overpowered, so you still have to work towards a victory, kind of. The explosive crossbow has a balance between power and fun, and overall it's a very good source for learning two-handed weapons. I have no idea why they buffed the fire blast. It was already really powerful before, because the damage ticks really fast, and with some DOT support, namely Hokuto's bow, the damage just goes through the roof. And all you need for the weapon to work is an oil source, which is very easy to come by. Fire Blast is probably up there with some of the best builds in the game. And it's one of those weapons where it's actually worth your time because you are standing still while you use it. The damage is so high that it's well worth the risk. The Firebrand is a very solid support burning weapon, though it can sometimes feel a bit too fast, so you can't really maximize damage without dual binding. It does work very well with oil, and if you get some burning affixes on your main weapon, Firebrand is a solid support to have. Because freeze is not a very viable mechanic in the game, especially on endgame higher BC levels, the Frost Blast can work very well in biomes. It's a good beginner item to learn to introduce freeze to the game, though it doesn't quite cut it in bosses. You can use it for experimenting. For example, I used it with Rhythm and Bazooki because I wanted to get down the critical hits. The Rhythm and Bazooki has a charge uptime, so you can use it for a little experimenting. It does work very well in biomes, but it will suffer a bit in bosses. The heavy crossbow may seem weak at first glance, but it's actually more viable if you use it with the Kill Rhythm mutation. The damage with critical hits is absolutely massive, and it applies in both biomes and bosses. It just needs a little bit of strategy to use, namely you have to know the timings of when you reload and when to fire the crossbow. I really like this weapon, even though it may not be the most powerful thing in the world. With a little patience and a little strategy, this weapon can be very powerful. The Hammerage is really good on paper, but I just think it's a little bit too boring to use. You're just basically spamming it until the target dies. It's so slow that I think it can be tactics survival, and I think brutality tactics just seems a little weird, though you just need a bleeding or poison affix on any support weapon, and you don't even have to hit the enemy with Hammerage the first time around, and you will always do critical hits. This is a weapon that I would say is very solid in general, I just don't really use it. The Hokuto's bow. Now, despite this weapon being nerfed, it's still very good. The best part is you don't even need to have it in your main hand, you can just put it in your backpack and use the Acrobatapack mutation. It's a very solid DLT option that every single build will want to have. It pretty much fits into every single tactics build. If you find Hokuto's bow, then you're picking Acrobatapack. It's just that good. So again, just like the Alchemic Carbine, it's one of those situations where no matter how hard you nerf a weapon, because it's just so powerful by its concept, it really does not matter. It's just too overpowered. A lot of people think the Ice Crossbow is possibly the weakest crossbow out of the whole, though for a little bit of trivia, if you use the Kill Rhythm mutation, you can actually freeze bosses because you're firing the bolt fast enough to hit them. Arguably, again, it's probably the weakest of the two-handed crossbows, but it's still pretty usable, I would say. And its main flavor comes from freeze synergies anyways, which you don't really see a lot of. The Ice Bow arguably has the same effects as the Frost Blast, though it's a little bit faster with less AoE. Now, this may be a personal preference between the two, but again, I just think freeze isn't too viable for boss fights. And while Ice Bow can be good in biomes, I did use it with the Valmont's Whip, you really have to switch it out for something else in bosses. The Ice Shards. Oh, how the mighty has fallen. On top of not being able to dual bind, the Ice Shards has been nerfed again in pretty much every single aspect. The slowdown duration is shorter, the damage got lowered. While it's not completely useless, I still find shields to be generally better in most scenarios now. Because the thing about the Ice Shards is that you could dual bind it with any slow melee weapon and use Kill Rhythm. And you're basically melting through every single biome in the game, but it just feels very one-dimensional because every Ice Shards build is pretty much the same, I would say. These builds were so fast that it defeated the purpose of survival being a slow and defensive archetype. Some people even called it fake tactics, which I would more or less agree. But overall, not nearly as useful as before, though you can still use it. The infantry bow has a cool concept, it's very powerful in nature, it just needs a little bit of support to make it really good. For example, Snake Fangs teleports you to nearby enemies, You can use meat skewer using the dash attack to close in the distance. You can also use phaser or grappling hook to again close in on the enemy. With a little bit of support, and because it's so flexible of what you can pair it up with, I just really like the infantry bow. I don't really use the lightning bolt. I'm guessing that it can work with enough practice. I just personally don't have a lot of experience using it. You do have to watch out that you can't hold down the bolt for too long, otherwise you'll start taking damage yourself. And if you're cursed, it will just instantly kill you. So there is a high learning curve to go along with this weapon. But I guess if you're really good at using it, go for it. The damage it does is still pretty good. The magic missiles got buffed in the recent patch, and just like the boomerang, the DPS of this weapon almost got doubled. So again, with the same Hand of the King footage, you see how with some good affixes, Magic Missiles is actually very strong now. With Wings of the Crow, you can pretty much autopilot some fights because of Magic Missiles' auto-targeting system. It fixed the one problem that I had before, is that it was really weak in the early game. But now with the execution mutation and some nice support, you can play Magic Missiles. So I won with the Marksman's Bow once, and that was when I did a build with the War Javelin. It's powerful in concept because you can use Tranquility to really boost your damage, though it is pretty risky to use, and it's really bad in some scenarios, because if you don't do critical hits, it basically does no damage. It's kind of like a meme type of playstyle. It can work, it's just that you do have to work a lot towards that victory. The Multiple Nox Bow is a weapon that I actually really like. I just think it's really solid. Multiple Nox Bow is one of the few ranged weapons in the game that has breach on it, meaning you can actually stun some enemies if you hit it a bunch of times with a bow. Now, there is a small charge up animation when you use it, so it's a bit slower to use, and you can't crit with it. But overall though, if you can master this weapon, it's actually extremely solid, and it's one of my favorite ranged weapons in the game. Nerves of Steel. Similarly to that one bow from Hades, it's powerful theoretically, though I find it a little bit too tedious to use. Now this may just be a personal preference. I know that the Nerves of Steel is actually extremely powerful because in the prisoner's quarters, it can pretty much one-shot every enemy in the biome. This is a weapon you really want to try it out for yourself before judging it. This is probably, again, just a personal preference. If you can master it, it's very good, but I just find it a little bit too tedious to use. The Pyrotechnics, in my opinion, is outranked by Fire Blast. They serve very similar functions, though I just think it doesn't function as well as a DLT source than Fire Blast. Now, in the recent patch, it did get a buff now that it can pierce enemies, so I guess that's cool. Just like Fire Blast, you need an oil source to really get it going. While it does hit harder, I just think that the constant crits from Fire Blast has more potential with Hokuto's Bow or the Instinct of the Master of Arms than the Pyrotechnics. Because these are so similar, I just can't really see a scenario where Pyrotechnics would do its job better. But overall, it's still pretty solid. The quick bow got a nerf in the recent patch. Now it needs 3 arrows stuck in the enemy to do crits. Before, it used to be just 2. Now it is still good because you can hold it down to really fire it extremely fast, though it is not as good as before. You can pair it up with the Barbed Tips mutation. It's still fairly efficient as a ranged weapon. It's just that, again, it got nerfed, so it's a little less good to use, but overall, pretty fantastic weapon. The Repeater Crossbow boasts a very fast attack speed, and it does very solid damage. This is one of the few weapons in the game that requires rooting synergy to make it work. Namely, you want to use Wolf Trap for bosses. You can pair it up with Instinct of the Master of Arms or Heart of Ice to constantly get cooldown on your skills. And it's probably one of the few weapons that does really well with rooting synergy. You can, I guess, pair it up with the Boy's Axe if you put it in the backpack if you're playing tactics, and that can also work. It's a very good weapon to get creative. There is a learning curve to it, though because of its fast firing speed and its creative potential, I just think it's up there with some of the best weapons in the game. The Sonic Carbine, while it's not completely useless now with the damage buff, I just think it's still far from good. So again, just like the War Spear, I don't like the fact how the critical hit condition cannot be controlled. That is, you can't exactly purposefully line up 2 enemies for you to do crits in. And on top of that, again, just like how Blowgun compares to the Assassin's Dagger, the Sonic Carbine does have an ammo count, If you run out, there is really nothing you can do about it. You can pair this up with the barbed tips mutation, but from what I can tell, the damage still doesn't do as much compared to some of the other ranged weapons. But this is a weapon I totally wouldn't mind doing a showcase run of in the future. I can see it working if you have a lot of support. The throwing knife used to be an extremely flexible support weapon because you could pretty much dual bind it with anything else. I paired it up with the blood sword in my blood sword build. You can pair it up with the shrapnel axes. You can pretty much pair it up with anything, and because it's both brutality and tactics, there's just a lot of potential to use it in. However, now that dual binding is finally being removed from the game, because the player is alternating between the two attacks really fast while it's dual binded, it's really able to bring out its potential. Now that you do have to press 2 buttons instead of 1, it is going to lower your DPS somewhat. So this is the reason why I'm putting it in the A tier instead of the S tier now. It is still good to use and a fantastic bleeding source, but I'm just saying it's less good now because dual binding is getting removed. The Boy's Axe is a very solid support weapon because it provides rooting synergy. It can work with a lot of builds, or it can just work on its own. There are a lot of ways to get creative with it. You can pair it up with the Nutcracker, which does critical hits when you hit rooted enemies. You can pair it up with Nerves of Steel, lock down enemies so you get a clear shot. You can pair it up with the Valmont's Whip because it roots enemies in place so you can get the perfect distance with the whip. Some people even pair it up with the Barrel Launcher. There are just a lot of ways to get creative. And as a support weapon, it's not that bad in bosses as well. It's not bad enough that you want to swap it for something else, and I just really like the creativity you can do with this. And last but not least is the War Javelin. This is a very unique support weapon, unlike anything I've seen in the game. I did use it with the Marksman's Bow as I mentioned previously. It actually takes a lot of skill to use the Javelin. And I know it's used as a speedrun tool, but obviously I'm not a speedrunner, so that doesn't really get factored into my rating. But this is really unlike anything I've seen in the game. I know some people can use this weapon really well. Again, this is one of those things where you really have to try it out for yourself to see if you like it. But I can see the creativity with this weapon. It's just that I'm not good with using it myself. I just think it's kind of too risky that I will hurt myself. But definitely try it out and see if you like it. So that's gonna do it for my range tier list for version 2.4 of Dead Cells. Hopefully you found this video entertaining. If you have any thoughts about the weapons, or if you have a different opinion, definitely let me know in the comments. That being said, I did mention this, but I will not be doing a skills tier list. But overall though, here is the entire tier list in one picture. I guess you can take a screenshot of it if you want. That's gonna do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.